Let me put on my official Fujifilm hat. Right, official Fujifilm hat. Here we go. These lights are actually blinding. Isn't this a cool hat? Fujifilm sent me this hat. It's the only thing Fujifilm's given me, so don't be going there. I had to pay for all this stuff myself. Yeah, my wallet's going. He sure did. So, here we go. Here's the big honker, the only Fujifilm GFX lens with image stabilization. The 120mm f4 macro, perfect for, you would think, like, well, f4 is not fast enough for portraiture, but you don't realize it's medium format. The depth of field on this at f4 is rather thin. You'd be surprised at how thin the depth of field on this medium format lens is at f4. Not cheap, $2,700. The full frame equivalent of this is a 95mm. This is a 0.5 magnification, so it's a macro lens. 14 elements, like I said, the only GFX lens with optical image stabilization. The minimum focusing distance on this is 45 centimeters, which is what, like 1.5 feet, basically? It is a pretty heavy lens, at a hair over 2 pounds. It makes the most interesting sound when you actually go out of image review. It sounds like something from a Star Wars movie. Very fascinating, interesting sound. For an element, it's not that big, is it? Is this lens worth $2,700? The answer actually is yes. It is kind of unwieldy big on the GFX with the tilt adapter and the viewfinder and the vertical grip and this huge honking 2+ pound lens sitting on the top of it. However, that's wonderful. I love heavy cameras. Heavy cameras are easier to hold stable. The image stabilization seems to be around about 3 stops of image stabilization on this lens. It's actually quite nice. It's not extreme. It's not as good as the 100-400 Fujifilm lens, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that lens. I shot it several times. It's one of only 2 Fujifilm X-Trans lenses that I don't own. That along with the graudy little 18mm, which is Fujifilm is redesigning. I don't know what else to say about the 120mm. The image rendition and the bokeh on it are incredibly nice. A lot of people make the mistake, and they've asked me the question on the 120mm. It's like, well, f4 isn't fast enough. You know, is this really a portrait lens? And the answer is yes. Depth of field at f4 on this lens is rather extreme. It is comparable to some lenses, some full-frame lenses at f2. The depth of field is that slim on this lens. Nobody's reviewing these lenses because basically almost nobody owns a GFX camera. And if they do, everybody I've seen that has a GFX camera, they just have this lens, which is the most undesirable. It's not a bad lens at all. It's actually an excellent lens, a 63mm f2.8, but of the 3 lenses that are out there, of which I own all of them, it would certainly be the lens that I would get rid of the soonest. This, the 63mm f2.8. The question is that now that I know that the adapted lenses work so well in the GFX, would I actually own this lens knowing what I know now? And I kind of suspected that would be the case, like the 105mm f2. Now that's not a macro lens. However, the 100mm 2.8 Tachina, which is a full 1:1 reproduction rate, also works well in the GFX adapted with basically no vignetting. The 105mm f2 DC Nikkor, which can be had for $630 basically used, renders basically as well as this 120mm f4 GFX lens. Obviously, there's no autofocus. Obviously, there's no image stabilization. There's no vibration reduction using that lens adapted with like the photo deox adapter. So that's not a possibility. You want to know how to blow dust off your lens without actually blowing on the lens? As you go like this, you go. What it does is it actually directs any wet stuff to your hand and then drops the air down to your lens without getting spit on your lens, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so that's my review. Very quick and easy. There's not much to review about this lens. I mean, if you have a GFX, you're thinking about getting this. Is this worth $2,700? It is. If you're getting it for portraiture, I'd actually consider waiting, and I don't know what the results on it are going to be. The 110mm f2 that's coming out for the GFX, which is exactly, I think it's the exact same price, $2,700 or $2,800. Not cheap. It has no image stabilization. However, it is obviously a faster lens. You talk about f2 versus f4 on this. Obviously, it doesn't do macro. Obviously, it would be an idealized portrait lens. However, I'm going to need to compare it before considering getting it compared to like an adapted lens like the Nikkor 105mm f2 DC Nikkor. If they're the same, then I'm not even going to consider it. Really, I already have everything that would go with the GFX. I mean, a macro portrait lens and a wide to mid tele, the 32 to 64, which is basically a full frame equivalent of a 25 to 51 millimeter lens, which I reviewed that lens like a week or week and a half ago. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I have to pay for all this stuff myself. Nobody is giving it to me. Nobody's like giving me free rental or anything like that. So if you want to drop a buck or two to go towards the replenishment of my ability to even consider like buying meat at the grocery store, it's like I suffer for what I do. Oh, trust me, I do. Yeah, I'm fat, but I don't eat. I go to the grocery store like, yeah, you know, I'd like to buy those cooked chicken bits, but they're kind of expensive. So instead I'm going to get some cheap soup. That's actually a true story, by the way. Oh, it is very true. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I absolutely love the GFX. The rendering, the micro contrast, the saturation that actually pops out of the monitor is incredible. That's just straight out of camera. That's not even considering what you can do with the shots in Lightroom or Photoshop. I'm not a Photoshop fan. If I can't really fix it in Lightroom, that means I did something wrong in taking the shot. That's not always the case, but can be typified to be the case. So that's it, the 120mm f4 with image stabilization. A huge, heavy, and very expensive lens. Thank you, and goodbye. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.